All right. Good morning, everyone. Uh, we are continuing with a lecture series here, and today's our guest speaker is Aneesh Khare. And I've had the privilege of knowing Anish for the last 6.5 years. He was my student at MIT World Peace University School of Law, and I used to be his constitutional law faculty. So I've taught him for over 2 years in the college. I remember we were the COVID batch. Anish, if you remember, we used to have lectures at 8:30 in the morning in an online mode again, like this only. We used to conduct our lectures. I used to conduct the lectures, and Anish was always very enterprising. I think from the first year itself, but we sort of broke the barrier in the second year onwards, got to know each other and his interest and his inclination. And when you're in college, then there's every small thing that you need to come to forward to. So Anish has been one of those bright stars in our batch with reference to law. He's a very good speaker. He's very intelligent. You can speak to him about anything and everything, be it Harry Potter, be it the Queen, be it the Commonwealth, or be it the how constitutional morality in India is sort of, changing its sphere. So in the last 2 years, Anish has been trying to pursue his master's from abroad, from New Zealand, which Anish can speak to you about. And he is doing a specialization with something which less than 1% of the population does it on, and which is on international trade. So that is his expertise and his knowledge, because I can surely say this, that in India, we don't have so many law colleges which provides expertise on international trade and commerce per se. So we might have a minor subject, but we don't have a full specialization subject which is being taught in any of these law colleges. Any of these law colleges, I'm saying, I want to mention here the premier law colleges, including my college, does not teach international trade law to its students. So I've requested Anish to sort of discuss this aspect with the class today, so that you get an idea of how WTO sort of functions and works, and especially with the US conflict, which is taking place thanks to Trump. So, Anish, thank you so much for coming on a short notice, because I remember we spoke the last week about it, and I know the kind of preparation that you must have done for this lecture would be monumental. So, thank you so much for coming for me here on an online mode and interacting with my students here at Shilkar Law College. And over to you, Anish. You may please continue. Thanks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First off, good morning to everyone. I want to thank Sanjana ma'am and the college for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all about some of the research that I did here whilst doing my Master of Laws at the University of Auckland. So I decided to take up the subject of international dispute settlement, which is taught by a former diplomat of New Zealand, and I had the privilege of learning under her, and she gave me various insights. And when I was going through that subject, around that same time, around 2nd of April, I think, Trump announced the global tariffs. He calls it the Liberation Day tariffs. And when I was learning public international law, even in my bachelor's as well as over here, I was always made to think that the World Trade Organization, or the WTO, is something very different. It is something which is not like other organs of the United Nations. So other organs of the United Nations always suffer from lack of decisiveness, or त्यांना decision घेताच येत नाही, or even if they take a decision, they are not able to implement it, and so on and so forth. We were always made, it was always made to think of that WTO is like a Marvel Avenger. He trade law world मध्ये काहीही झालं, then you don't need to worry. WTO is there for you. And but when Trump announced his tariffs and the newspaper coverage started coming in, I saw that WTO has disappeared. There is no mention of it. Like even today, तुम्ही आज पण newspaper वर बघा किंवा जे तुम्ही articles वाचताय, you will not come across much being mentioned about what the WTO is doing about it. But why? It was supposed to be this sort of superhero, right? So first off, so my attempt in this series is in this lecture is that I'll try to tell you ki why did we think that the WTO was invincible? What weapons did it have at its disposal? and why is it currently so weak in this situation with the US that it is nowhere to be seen, right? So WTO has one of the most comprehensive dispute settlement procedures as compared to all other organs of the United Nations. It includes elements of mediation, arbitration, and at the same time, it is supported by a very strong enforcement mechanism. After all, a court is only as powerful if its judgment can be enforced, right? So in many ways, WTOचं जे जजमेंट द्यायचं सिस्टम होतं, that was way more powerful and effective than the International Court of Justice also, which is called a world's top court. So, what was it, right? So, WTO's dispute settlement procedure is governed by the Dispute Settlement Body or DSB. DSBचे members सगळे WTO member states असतात. As soon as your country becomes a member of the WTO, it automatically becomes a member of the Dispute Settlement Body. So if hypothetically, if let's say India and Pakistan are two favorite rivals, let's say त्यांच्यामध्ये भांडण झालंय, there is a trade dispute amongst them. So I'll just take that as an example and I'll explain the dispute settlement procedure in a easy to understand manner. So let's say India has some problems with how Pakistan is treating with it. So India can let the DSB know की आम्हाला पाकिस्तानशी हे problems आहेत and we are inviting Pakistan to consult with us. This is the official first stage or the consultation stage. So when the consultation request is given, the opposing country has to respond within 10 days. एक प्रिलिमिनरी रिप्लाय द्यायला लागतो त्यांना टू द डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट बॉडी की व्हॉट डू दे थिंक अबाउट द एलिगेशन्स अँड लाईक व्हॉट आर देअर व्ह्यूज ऑन दॅट इश्यू. वन्स दे डू दॅट त्याच्यानंतर इफ या 10 दिवसात लेट्स अज्युम पाकिस्तानने आपल्या रिप्लायच नाही दिला, then India has the right to skip the consultation stage altogether and ask the DSB to shift to the next stage of the dispute settlement procedure. But if Pakistan replies, then what happens? Well, almost like a mediation stage, we enter into a consultation stage with them. Manje India and Pakistanche diplomats can get together, they can talk, they can try to bury the hatchet, that sort of thing. आणि त्याच्यात if they come to a conclusion, well and good. So they have a minimum period of 60 days, ज्याच्यात they have to try and talk to each other. And within those 60 days, if nothing happens, they can ask the DSB to proceed to the next stage, or they can keep on increasing the consultation stage. सो आता जे US चायनाचं जे ट्रेड वॉर चालू आहे त्याच्यात चायना हॅज इनिशिएटेड दिस डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट प्रोसिजर. They have entered the consultation stage since April and they have kept on increasing it. They are not going to the next stage. And but there is no, like, just for today's lecture, I ensured that I refreshed my research and I went back on their website to see what's the update. But it is still stuck in the consultation stage. सो कन्सल्टेशन स्टेजमध्ये ऍज सच WTOचा काही डायरेक्ट रोल नसतो. नाव नेक्स्ट काय असतं? सो लेट्स से कन्सल्टेशन्स फेल. So then we say to the DSB ki now we want to enter the next stage. The next stage will be the adjudication panel stage. So अगदी सोप्या भाषेत म्हणायचं झालं, सो अ पॅनल ऑफ जजेस और आर्बिट्रेटर्स हु आर गोइंग टू डिसाइड की हा मॅटर कसा सॉल्व्ह करायचा आहे. सो DSB टू एन्श्योर दॅट there is a good amount that the countries who are fighting, they are having a good amount of influence over who are the judges. तुमच्याकडे there is a list that is maintained by the WTO. त्या लिस्ट मधनं कंट्रीज दोन्ही चूज करू शकतात की त्यांचे जजेस कोण असणार. आणि तुम्ही जर एक डेव्हलपिंग नेशन असाल तर तुमच्याकडे स्पेशल राईट असतो टू एन्श्योर की ऍटलिस्ट एक मेंबर असेल पॅनलवरचा तो एका डेव्हलपिंग कंट्रीचा सिटीजन असेल. सो ऍडज्युडिकेशन पॅनलमध्ये मिनिमम there are three judges and maximum it can be 5 if the parties feel that they need to have a bigger panel. So adjudication panel खूप वेज मध्ये एका कोर्ट सारखंच फंक्शन करतं, और लाईक अन आर्बिट्रेशन पॅनल. दे विल कॉल फॉर एव्हिडन्स, ते तुमचे आर्ग्युमेंट्स ऐकतील, दे विल ट्राय टू अंडरस्टँड व्हॉट इज द मॅटर, and they'll have the full right to come to a judgment. Now this so when they make a judgment, they'll issue a report. हा जो रिपोर्ट असतो इट गोज टू द डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट बॉडी द डीएसबी. डीएसबी कडे तो गेला की डीएसबी इज सपोज टू वोट ऑन इट्स अडॉप्शन. अडॉप्शन म्हणजे बेसिकली डीएसबी एक्सेप्ट करतं की ह्या पॅनलनी जे काय म्हणलंय ते बरोबर आहे आणि हे जजमेंट झालेलं आहे ऑफिशियली डब्ल्यूटीओचं. And if the DSB rejects or refuses, or sorry, the DSB cannot reject the panel report. Karan, unlike दुसरे ऑर्गन्स ऑफ द युनायटेड नेशन्स वेअर ऍब्सल्यूट मेजॉरिटी किंवा एक कंट्रीच्या नाही म्हणण्यावर judgment or a thing can be stopped, in WTO, the DSB members, you cannot vote against it. Even if 3 to 15 countries also say we don't like this judgment, it will still be adopted. That is what made the procedure so nice and so effective, and that's what earned WTO that reputation. But of course, WTO मध्ये you also have a right to appeal against the panel report, the first adjudication panel report. So if a country appeals against that decision, it goes before the appellate body of the WTO. But as in Marathi, we say, ki mashi kuthe shinkli. Well, in this case, it is the WTO's appellate body where everything has come crashing down today. Funnily enough, WTO has not had a single person serving on its appellate body since 2019. म्हणजे 2019 पासून म्हणायला हायकोर्ट आहे, पण हायकोर्टमध्ये एकही जज नाहीये. So what happens is that a country gets a right to appeal against a particular decision. तो अपील जातो, but अपील ऐकायला, अपीलवर रूल करायला कोणीच नाहीये. Now you might ask की असं कसं, how, like why WTO नी इतक्या प्रकारे स्वतःला पॉवरफुल केलं होतं, then how have they landed at this problem? So well, डीएसबीचा एक रूल असतो की जे द अपेलेट बॉडीचे जे जजेस असतात, they are appointed by the DSB through consensus. Meaning, even if a single country officially says no against a particular person, he will not be appointed to that body. And
Anish, please continue.
yeah, sure. And the so so what has happened is that since 2017, USG it has been vetoing each and every person who has been suggested to be appointed to the appellate body. And this is not only Trump. ट्रम्प नंतर जो बायडन आणि कमला हॅरिसची पण जी गव्हर्नमेंट आली आहे, दे हॅव ऑल्सो नॉट डन एनिथिंग टू सॉल्व्ह दिस प्रॉब्लेम. दे हॅव ऑल्सो कंटिन्यूड द सेम policy of rejecting each and every person who is suggested to be appointed to the appellate body. आणि त्याच्यामुळे काय झालं इज दॅट द लास्ट मेंबर रिटायर्ड फ्रॉम द appellate body in 2019. सो त्याच्यामुळे फ्रॉम सिन्स देन 2019 पासून WTO does not have a functioning appellate body even today. And so what is happening is that सगळे केसेस जे आहेत, if a case is appealed against in the WTO, its report cannot be adopted because it will go into appeal, and until the appellate body does not rule on it, it cannot be accepted as a judgment. And just to conclude how the WTO dispute settlement procedure works, assuming taking for our example of India and Pakistan, let's say आपला adjudication panel मध्ये case गेली, and let's assume that this is pre-2019 where there is an appellate body functioning. Then after that, let's say the appellate body gives a judgment in India's favor. Then the judgment will have to be accepted by the DSB, the WTO DSB. And once it is accepted, it becomes binding on all the countries. Now, like I said, a court will only be as powerful as to the level to which its judgment can be enforced. So WTO has ensured that also. WTO pramane, the DSB is required to ensure that if Pakistan were, let's say, 10 goshti karayla sangitlayat त्यांना for India, then DSB has to ensure that Pakistan actually follows through on that. And if they don't, the DSB can suspend various privileges that you as a member state of the WTO enjoy. म्हणजे अगदी बेसिक एक्झाम्पल दिला तर अंडर द WTO अग्रीमेंट्स जे डेव्हलपिंग नेशन्स असतात दे आर अलाउड टू प्रोटेक्ट सर्टन इंडस्ट्रीज विदिन देअर कंट्री डिस्पाइट WTO advocating for free trade. So, for example, India has always protected its agricultural sector. दॅट्स वाय आपल्याला आज पण ऍग्रिकल्चरल सेक्टरमध्ये प्रायव्हेट कंपनीज दिसत नाही किंवा फॉरेन कंट्रीजचे कंपनीज आर नॉट अलाउड टू पार्टिसिपेट इन आर ऍग्रिकल्चरल सेक्टर. सो दिस इज अ प्रिव्हिलेज दॅट वी एन्जॉय ॲज अ WTO मेंबर स्टेट ॲज अ डेव्हलपिंग कंट्री. सो उद्या कोणी आपल्याला WTO मध्ये ह्याच्यासाठी सू नाही करू शकत. बट टुमॉरो लेट्स से इफ वी ॲज अ वी आर नॉट abiding or we are not following the judgment that has been given by the DSB, then the DSB can revoke certain privileges, which might include this also. आणि ज्याच्यामुळे अजून केसेस तुमच्या अगेन्स्ट सुरू होऊ शकतात. सँक्शन्स पण बसू शकतात, ट्रेड सँक्शन्स विच आर व्हेरी व्हेरी हार्मफुल टू अ कंट्रीज इकॉनॉमी. तुम्हाला म्हणजे शेवटी पैसा बोलतो, राईट? सो इफ युअर कंट्री इज नॉट अर्निंग, यू आर गोइंग टू फील द पिंच आणि देन यू विल एंड अप डुईंग व्हॉट हॅज बीन आस्क्ड ऑफ यू. सो ह्या सगळ्या फंक्शन्समुळे WTO ला खूप पॉवरफुल मानलं जायचं. बट ॲपेलेट बॉडी क्रायसिस सुरू झाल्यापासनं WTO इज इन अ लिम्बो. सिन्स त्याचं जजमेंट कॅनॉट बी पुट इन टू फोर्स, it cannot take any sort of actions against any country which is not complying with those decisions because तो डिसिजन अपील मध्ये अडकलाय. अँड कंट्रीजनी भरपूर राऊंड ऑफ टॉक्स झालेले आहेत US बरोबर. अँड दे हॅव बट US कीप सेईंग दॅट WTO इज नॉट रिस्पेक्ट. WTO ची ॲपेलेट बॉडी इज टू पॉवरफुल. US प्रमाणे WTO ची ॲपेलेट बॉडी इज डुईंग ज्युडिशियल ऍक्टिव्हिजम, म्हणजे अत्यंत फॅन्सी भाषेत म्हणायचं तर जजेस त्यांच्या कामापेक्षा पलीकडे जात आहेत आणि दे आर गोइंग बियॉन्ड व्हॉट दे आर आस्क्ड टू डू. आणि WTO ॲपेलेट बॉडीचे जे डिसिजन्स असतात ते प्रिसिडेंट्स होतात. जसं आपल्याकडे सुप्रीम कोर्ट हायकोर्टनी काही डिसिजन दिला की तो बाइंडिंग होऊन जातो, हिस्ट्री आपल्या प्रिसिडेंट बनून जातो. सेम वेज मध्ये WTO ची ॲपेलेट बॉडीनी काही डिसिजन दिला तर तो एक बाइंडिंग प्रेसिडेंट होतो जे फ्युचर बॉडीला पण फॉलो करायला लागतो. अँड US हॅड टू फेस सेव्हरल जजमेंट्स अगेन्स्ट देमसेल्स आणि त्याच्यामुळे कुठेतरी युएसचं डोकं फिरलं अँड दे जस्ट डिसाइडेड ना रहेगा बास ना बजेगी बासुरी. इफ द ॲपलेट बॉडी इज नॉट देअर दे कांट हार्म अस. सो ऑफकोर्स तुमच्या मनात प्रश्न आला असेल की मग WTO इतके वर्ष काय करते, राईट? 2017 पासून हा प्रॉब्लेम सुरू झाला. समथिंग मस्ट हॅव बीन डन. सो युरोपियन युनियन आणि काही अजून कंट्रीजनी मिळून दे स्टार्टेड अन इंटरिम आर्बिट्रेशन mechanism, which is called a multi-party. It's a big acronym, but basically MPIA, which stands for an alternative arbitration that serves as an appeal procedure. सो टेक्निकली तुम्ही MPIA कडे जाऊ शकता इन्स्टेड ऑफ गोइंग टू दी ॲपेलेट बॉडी आणि MPIA एक आर्बिट्रल अवॉर्ड देईल विच यू विल हॅव टू देन फॉलो. बट दिस ऑल्सो हॅज इट्स ओन प्रॉब्लेम्स. MPIA इज नॉट समथिंग जे WTOच्या अग्रीमेंट्स मध्ये बनलंय. सो MPIA's arbitral awards are not binding as per WTO law. Meaning जर MPIAनी इंडियाच्या अगेन्स्ट लेट्स से एक आर्बिट्रल अवॉर्ड दिला पण आपले मिनिस्टर्स म्हणले की नाही, आम्हाला नाही फॉलो करायचंय, वी डोंट वॉन्ट दिस आर्बिट्रल अवॉर्ड, वी आर नॉट गोइंग टू अबाइड बाय इट, तर मग टुमॉरो द डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट बॉडी कॅनॉट पास सँक्शन्स अगेन्स्ट अस फॉर दॅट बिकॉज वी आर ऑनली लॉ बाउंड टू अबाइड बाय द DSB's डिसिजन्स अँड द MPIA डिसिजन इज नॉट अ DSB डिसिजन. आणि अजून एक मोठा प्रॉब्लेम हा आहे की MPIA मध्ये US इज नॉट पार्टिसिपेटिंग. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दॅट आत्ताचे जे डिस्प्यूट चाललेत, सो आत्ताचे जे ट्रेड डिस्प्यूट चाललेत, आउट ऑफ दॅट चायना आणि कॅनडा दोघांनीही युएसच्या अगेन्स्ट दे हॅव ब्रॉट केसेस बिफोर द WTO. बोथ आर इन द कन्सल्टेशन स्टेज. दे हॅव नॉट येट गॉन टू द adjudication स्टेज विच इज द सेकंड स्टेज. आणि जरी त्या स्टेजमध्ये गेले आणि जरी युएसच्या अगेन्स्ट जजमेंट आला तर ऑफकोर्स इट विल गो इन टू द अपील प्रोसिजर आणि मग ते काय द रेस्ट इज हिस्ट्री, काही त्याचं होणार नाही पुढे. सो सो यू माइट आस्क की मग काहीच सोल्युशन नाहीये का? वेल, एक सोल्युशन आहे. इनफॅक्ट तुम्ही जर पाहिलं द वे द WTO अग्रीमेंट्स हॅव बीन मेड खूप स्मार्टली बनवलेत ते. तुम्ही जर इफ यू जस्ट गो बाय द वर्ड ऑफ लॉ, या सगळ्या प्रॉब्लेम्सला त्यांनी तोडगा देऊन ठेवलेला आहे इन द अग्रीमेंट. सो WTO ची जी अग्रीमेंट आहे त्याचा आर्टिकल 9 क्लॉज 1 हे सांगतं की WTO ची जनरल काउन्सिल can pass decisions by vote if a decision is not being passed by consensus. So म्हणजे अत्यंत simple example. आता we are 17 people in this meeting. Let's assume we are the WTO General Council, which is the highest decision making body of the WTO. आणि let's say आपण जो डिसिजन घेतोय तो मला पटत नाहीये, or maybe Sanjana ma'am is saying no to it. So then, using Article 9, Clause 1 of the agreement, you guys can circumvent, manje you can put aside me and Sanjana ma'am's opposition to the decision by calling a vote. And is there 51% by majority, if the people approve the decision, then it will become a binding decision by the General Council. And the WTO General Council ला काही रिझर्व्ह पॉवर्स पण दिले. सो ऑल्दो ॲपेलेट बॉडीचे जे मेंबर्स असतात दे आर सपोज टू बी अपॉइंटेड बाय द डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट बॉडी. WTO ची जी जनरल काउन्सिल आहे इट हॅज अन ओव्हर आर्चिंग पॉवर की ते कुठलाही इश्यू अंडर द WTO अग्रीमेंट्स दे देमसेल्स कॅन रिझॉल्व्ह इट. सो जनरल काउन्सिल कडे हा पूर्ण राईट आहे टू से दॅट सिन्स द डिस्प्यूट सेटलमेंट बॉडी इज नॉट अपॉइंटिंग मेंबर्स टू द ॲपेलेट बॉडी, वी आर गोइंग टू डू दिस बाय Article 9 Clause 1 of the WTO agreement. Now, तुम्ही मला you might ask me that who sits in the general council then? If DSB has all the members of the WTO, then who is sitting in the general council? Well, basically, both are the same people. So, aparnats, all of us participants in the meeting, if we are all WTO member states, Dharma, when we meet as DSB, we all can also meet as the General Council. It will just be like meeting roomच्या बाहेरचा बोर्ड बदलला and your powers change according to that. That's the way the General Council works. But why has this not been followed? Well, हा जर ऑल्दो हा लॉ मध्ये दिला गेलेला ऑप्शन आहे की जनरल काउन्सिल कॅन पुट द US असाइड बाय डुईंग दॅट, इट विल बी अ व्हेरी पॉलिटिकल थिंग टू डू. आणि कंट्रीज वी कॅनॉट डिनाय दॅट US इज अ सुपर पॉवर. सो अल्टिमेटली जे सगळे WTO मेंबर स्टेट्स आहेत दे आर रिलायंट ऑन द US फॉर समथिंग ऑर दी अदर. आर्मी असो, सायन्स इक्विपमेंट असो, काहीही असो, देर आर सो मेनी थिंग्स इन विच US इज एंगेजिंग विथ एव्हरीवन. सो today, if the countries of the WTO try to pull this stunt where ते Article 9 इन्व्होक करून US ला बायपास करून ॲपेलेट बॉडी मध्ये लोकांना अपॉइंट करत जातील, उद्या US might just say we are leaving the WTO because of this, or it might hurt the other country, म्हणजे जे member states आहेत, it might hurt them in other areas of trading or other areas of their relationship with the US. आता US किती वॉलेटाईल आहे करंटली हे आपण सगळ्यांनीच पाहिलंय. ॲट वन पॉइंट ट्रम्प इज प्रेझिंग आर प्राईम मिनिस्टर की हा माझा मित्र आहे, हा माझ्यासाठी असं करतो. दुसऱ्या एंडला he imposes tariffs upon tariffs on India for some random reason. So अशामुळे countries are not willing to take this measure, even though it is not something that is an overly crazy idea, and which is something that has been provided for by law. So unfortunately, when it comes to the current crisis, WTO अडकली आहे. WTO at the most is doing consultations. I am not denying that they must be working around the clock to try and bring this situation under control, because free trade, tariff free trade is something जे एन्शोर करायला WTO बनलं. And when the world's largest economy says now we don't believe in free trade, we are going to tariff everything, that is literally questioning the WTO's basic mission and agenda. ते इन्स्टामध्ये सध्या ट्रेंड चालू आहे ना, दिस वॉज नॉट ऑन माय बिंगो कार्ड फॉर 2025. आय थिंक द कोलॅप्स ऑफ द फ्री ट्रेड वर्ल्ड वॉज नॉट ऑन WTO's 2025 bingo card. But unfortunately, it has come. And they are struggling. They are struggling. Because, and problem hai ki they are not able to get past it. And the situation is very weird because जोपर्यंत appellate body crisis सॉल्व्ह नाही होत तोपर्यंत WTO ची जी पॉवर आणि प्रेस्टिज आहे इट वोंट रिटर्न. And I think somewhere countries also might be happy hearts of hearts की चला, since US is the villain, US नी appellate bodyला dysfunctional केलंय, so उद्या आपण जरी काही चुका केल्या we can't be held accountable for that. So today, who knows, hearts of hearts, China must also be very happy. EU must also be very happy. That's why they are not trying to take up this matter so seriously. So, as of now, the US problem can only be solved domestically through their own Supreme Court. Uh, the basis on which Trump has taken those tariff decisions, actually tariff impose करण्याची पॉवर US प्रेसिडेंटकडे नसते. त्यांच्या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन प्रमाणे टॅरिफ इम्पोजिशनची पॉवर US काँग्रेस म्हणजे त्यांच्या पार्लमेंटकडे असते. But he has invoked those powers under some National Security Act, and through that he has made them executive orders, which is why they are being questioned before the US Supreme Court. But Sadhya US Supreme Court is very much in agreement with whatever Trump does. So maybe he will still get his way. But as of now, in my research, I could not conclusively find a way to the way in which the WTO could solve this issue. And I was quite frustrated because I'll tell you, तुम्हाला सांगतो, माझा पेपर जेव्हा रेडी झाला होता, संजना मॅम had read it. And Sanjana ma'am had just said one thing to me, that Anish, great, you have critiqued it very well, but what is the solution? Where is your solution? What? And that also forced me to think, ki, what is the solution here? But I could not give ma'am a solution because the it is that body itself is struggled, paralyzed in its own problems. So it's like
Right.
I don't know how it's going to be solved, but yeah. So this was my humble attempt at explaining the current situation through a public international law perspective, and in the meantime, give you guys an idea of how the WTO's dispute mechanism works. And yeah, and I hope तुम्हाला असं नाही वाटलं की धनतेरस वाया गेला ह्याच्याबरोबर.
No, so Anish, thank you so much. But since your professors are bureaucrats, they are on that body who creates laws and are specially impacted by what WTO is doing at an international platform. So, what is their take on that? Can you give us a little bit of it?
So yes, ma'am. So आमच्या ज्या my professor Caroline Foster, she is a former diplomat. She has even worked on the Kyoto Protocol. Like she's one of the authors for it.
Right.
And many of the times we discuss various aspects of international law, sometimes marine law, environmental law, this, that. And every time I would get frustrated, ma'am, laws are not strong enough. Ma'am, this is not this. So I was like, ma'am, why don't international agreements create more stronger laws? So she just smiled at me and she said, Anish, you are being naive. You are acting like a little kid. She said, of course. Do you think जे तुझ्या डोक्यात आलंय ते आमच्या डोक्यात नाही आलं? Like, we don't want to create binding laws that will impose this punishment, that punishment on a country for not complying with it. But the simple thing is that the international law is a law of convenience. There is no international state to which the countries are bound. So it's like, even if you introduce such laws tomorrow, countries won't ratify it. They will not accept it on me. So dealing with the political angle of it is a part and parcel of our job. We cannot distance ourselves from it. And yes, it is deeply frustrating, but we have to make do with it. We can't do anything about it. It is like a problem that cannot be solved when it comes to international law. She's like on me, bodies like European Union can pass such binding laws and this that, but because the European Union is not an international organization per se, it is a supranational federal government that these countries have created, where त्यांनी स्वतःची sovereignty they have given it up to the EU.
Mm.
So that was their answer to me, and it has stuck with me ever since.
All right. No, because actually what happens is that if big players like China, Russia, and US especially make these laws and they say, oh, we are not going to follow it. So, the impact of it is going to be very humongous on the small nation states like New Zealand for that matter. And they are not in a position to say no. New Zealand requires, I mean, the most of it works on import and export. So they are not in a position to say no, but the powerful countries unfortunately have that power with them by saying that, oh, we will not follow this because it does not align with our interest. So this is a problem and a challenge. And I think in the last, 100 years, almost close to 100 years after what W not the United Nations formation, we do not have any appropriate solution on how international problems solution we can solve it. So in a case like this, what can we do except sit and discuss and deliberate, because something like this will not actually solve any of the issues. Okay, so that is there. Yes, Santosh, sir, do you have any questions? Anish, if you have the time, we can take like two,
Yeah.
three questions from our students. Yeah, Santosh. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hi. Uh, I haven't read much about WTO, but I could remember one article when I was reading it like a couple of years back. It was around uh, the complaint was raised by Brazil against India, and it was more around like Indian government is giving more subsidies and making policies which are favoring Indian farmers in producing large amount of sugars, and it's affecting their export of sugar because they are the primary major exporter of sugars. So, I mean, I just wanted to know, like, in such cases where a country is giving more benefit to certain sector within the country, within themselves, right? In such cases, can WTO do something? I mean, do they have rights to do ask a country to not to do that and give a same ground for every country and their citizens to play on?
So basically the WTO is functioning on something called as the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade.
Okay.
So, under this GATT agreement, as it is called, under the GATT agreement, the countries have been given special privileges if they are developing nations. One of those privileges is protecting certain sectors from foreign investment, etc. So, if you see, even like recently, New Zealand's prime minister visited India with the largest trade delegation New Zealand has ever sent, etc. But still, we don't have any news of a free trade agreement. Why? Because New Zealand's biggest export is milk. And India is like, we want to protect our dairy sector. We are not going to allow a foreign player into it. So it has been a sticking point. So WTO, if it feels that you're a developing nation and if you are fulfilling those criteria which allow you those special privileges, then yes, they will protect you or they'll defend your stance. But of course, if they feel that you're like tomorrow, if US starts like what US is doing right now is technically a violation of GATT because they are a developed country who are still imposing protectionist measures over nothing.
Mhm.
So they can hold they can hold a US responsible through the dispute settlement procedure. But as we have covered, that is a problem in its own way.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Aditi, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know a lot about this topic, so I just had to ask this question. Suppose एखादा war झाला किंवा एखादा attack झाला. Let's take Pakistan versus India, the Pahalgam and Operation Sindoor and everything. So is it compulsory for India or Pakistan to go to the DSB?
It is not compulsory as such. The DSB cannot force you to come to them. It is a voluntary procedure in terms of a country approaching the DSB. But yes, if once a country approaches the DSB, then as an opposing country you can't say I'll not participate in this. Like International Court of Justice जर तू बघितलंस, then every time when a country is challenged over there, half the times the opposing country says, no, I don't accept ICJ's jurisdiction, and done, dusted, over. The great top court of the world can't do anything about it. That way, the DSB doesn't have a problem of jurisdiction. But of course, what is the issue is also important. So if our current issue goes before the DSB, like we suspended trade between Pakistan and India, and they also suspended vice versa. So tomorrow, if we approach or they approach the DSB over this, of course हा अँगल घेतला जाणार into consideration की आत्ताची सिच्युएशन काय आहे दोन्ही कंट्रीज मध्ये. They will not just look at the fact की trade was suspended, or they will not just force India and Pakistan to restart trade with each other.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
All right, great. So, Anish, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with reference to WTO. I hope that it was a fruitful lecture for all of us students here. And I hope to see you more with these talks and discussions. And whenever you are here in Pune, we'll catch up with the reference to our discussions and many other things that we are here. So first, I'm looking forward for you to come to India with your masters, and thank you so much on behalf of the management, the trustees at Shilkar Law College. And when you're here, we would also want to invite you for a guest lecture in a physical format so that you can interact with the students here. And maybe in December or January, like we had the ISLP at MIT, we are also scheduling a conference on that sort. So we would request you to be a resource person for that as well. Yeah. Thank you so much, Anish, for coming in today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.